If there is one universal truth that binds every human experience together, one undeniable reality that we all must eventually confront, it is the relentless presence of adversity, for we have all stood at the edge of the abyss, facing the crushing weight of loss, the stinging bitterness of betrayal, the hollow ache of failure, or the paralyzing fog of uncertainty. And in those darkest of hours, the soul screams out a single, desperate question: how do I possibly keep moving forward? While some may seek temporary refuge in the fleeting rush of external motivation, or attempt to rebuild themselves through self-help books and psychological strategies, which certainly have their place, there exists something far deeper, something infinitely more potent that does not merely grant you the strength to endure, but fundamentally transforms you from the inside out. And that power is an unshakable faith in God. You must understand that faith is not merely an intellectual assent to the existence of a supreme being, nor is it simply the ritual of attending church or occasionally glancing at a Bible. Rather, true faith is a conviction so profound and so visceral that it sculpts your very patterns of thought, dictates your actions, and alters the lens through which you perceive reality, allowing you to walk with absolute composure through the fiercest hurricane without surrendering your inner peace. It is the force that compels you to trust that God is firmly in control even when the map of your life has been burned to ashes. Because let us be brutally honest, life is not a simple journey, a fact that Jesus himself made abundantly clear in the book of John when he stated that in this world you will have tribulation. Yet he immediately followed this stark reality with a command to take heart, for he has overcome the world. Notice carefully that he did not suggest you might face problems. He promised them, but he also clarified that our trust in him guarantees victory. And so today, drawing from 30 years of walking this ancient path, I want to take you on a journey into the architecture of the soul to reveal how faith in God creates a mental fortitude that is nothing short of invincible. We must realize that faith is not just a spiritual abstraction but a tangible mental fortress. It is not about passively waiting for miracles while sitting idle, but about learning to think, act, and react in a way that renders you unbreakable before the trials of life. As we traverse this landscape together, I will demonstrate how this sacred trust rewires your neurology to overcome fear, anxiety, and the unknown, explaining step by step how relying on the divine bestows upon you a psychology of triumph, proving why those who possess genuine faith are the only ones who never truly surrender. Faith, you see, is not a crutch for the weak. It is the exclusive domain of the brave, for it belongs to those who dare to believe in what they cannot yet see, who march forward when the road is shrouded in darkness. And once you grasp this, once you truly embody this living faith, you will discover that there is no obstacle on earth capable of destroying you. Let us begin by understanding that faith in God serves as the bedrock of an unshakable mind. For no matter how intelligent, prepared, or physically dominant you may be, life will inevitably throw something at you that exceeds your human capacity. Be it a devastating illness, a financial collapse, or a heartbreak that tears you apart. And this is precisely where the masses crumble because their mental strength is built on fragile ground. Jesus illustrated this perfectly in the Gospel of Matthew when he spoke of two foundations, describing the one who hears his words and acts upon them as a prudent man who built his house upon the rock. The rains descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat vehemently against that house. Yet it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. Conversely, the one who hears but does not act is like a foolish man who built on sand. And when the inevitable storms arrived, the structure collapsed with a great crash. It is crucial to observe that Jesus never promised the wise builder an exemption from the storm. He did not say the wind would not howl or the rain would not fall. But he promised that the house would not fall, meaning that faith does not shield you from the confrontation of pain. But it ensures that the pain will not annihilate you because your foundation is immutable. Consider for a moment that most people anchor their emotional stability to temporal things like their bank accounts, their career titles, the applause of others, or favorable circumstances. And the moment those variables shift, the moment the job is lost or the rejection comes, they completely disintegrate because their peace was constructed on shifting sand. However, when your faith is anchored in the Creator, there is a distinct quality about you. You can lose everything and still stand tall. You can receive the worst diagnosis and not fall apart. You can be in the center of a chaotic storm and yet possess a tranquility that defies logic. Simply because your strength is not derived from what you own or achieve, but from the knowledge that the Almighty is with you. Look at the ancient narrative of Job, a man who lost his children, his wealth, and his health in a single wave of tragedy. Yet in his deepest valley, he had the spiritual stamina to declare that the Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Can you imagine possessing a faith of that magnitude? A resolve so fierce that even as your world collapses, your trust in God remains untouched? This is where many falter, claiming to have faith only when the sun is shining, treating God as a fair weather friend. But the moment the shadows lengthen, they descend into doubt and complaint because they never truly built on the rock. Therefore, the first pillar of mental toughness is to ground yourself in the eternal, not in your emotions or your situation, ensuring that your peace is independent of external chaos. Furthermore, faith instills in you a mentality of victory rather than defeat, a critical distinction where many well-meaning believers miss the mark. They pray and read scripture, yet their internal dialogue remains that of a victim, constantly plagued by the what-ifs of failure and disaster. Unaware that if your mind is saturated with doubt, your faith is being suffocated. The Apostle Paul in Romans urges us not to conform to the patterns of this world but to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. A clear indication that God's intervention often begins with our own cognitive restructuring. Faith is not just believing in God. It is thinking like a child of God. Tragically, many live with a slavery mindset, mirroring the Israelites who, despite witnessing the Red Sea part and eating manna from heaven, crumbled at the first sign of hardship, longing to return to the chains of Egypt because their minds were still enslaved even though their bodies were free. This is the reflection of so many today who, despite having seen God's deliverance in the past, freeze before new challenges, trapped in the paralysis of, "I can't," or "it's impossible," failing to realize that they are called to be conquerors. To be mentally strong, you must aggressively renew your mind, shifting from a wait and see attitude to a certainty that God is in control. You cannot claim to believe in the Almighty while acting as if you are hopeless. Recall David before the giant Goliath. He did not timidly hope for assistance. He boldly declared that the same God who delivered him from the lion and the bear would deliver him from the Philistine. A statement born not of wishful thinking but of absolute evidence-based confidence in God's history of faithfulness. This is the essence of faith, living with the assurance that the battle is already won. And when you adopt this perspective, you stop walking as a victim and start walking as a victor, knowing you are never alone. Moving deeper, we must address the enemies of mental fortitude, specifically fear and anxiety. For fear is a paralysis that robs you of your destiny. Yet we must acknowledge that feeling fear is a natural human reaction. The problem arises only when we allow fear to take the driver's seat. We must remember that fear causes you to miss opportunities and doubt the miraculous. But faith is the antidote, not because it eliminates the feeling of fear, but because it strips fear of its authority. We are reminded in 2 Timothy that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. This means that fear is not native to your design. It is an intruder, and when you operate in faith, fear evaporates because you realize that the outcome does not rest on your limited shoulders but on God's infinite capability. Think of Peter walking on the water. As long as his gaze was locked on Jesus, he defied the laws of physics. But the second he focused on the wind and the waves, he began to sink. A powerful metaphor for our lives. When we obsess over our problems, we drown. But when we fix our eyes on the divine, we walk over the very things that sought to kill us. A strong mind is not one that never feels fear, but one that knows exactly where to look when fear strikes, and that is towards the Creator. Reminding yourself that if God is for you, no fear can stand against you. Closely linked to this is the transformation of anxiety into peace. For many erroneously believe that faith acts as a magic wand to banish all worry instantly. But faith is actually a daily discipline, a mental muscle that chooses trust over panic. Anxiety is simply the result of a mind imagining a future without God in it, focusing on potential catastrophes rather than past deliverances. The scriptures in Philippians instruct us to be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, to let our requests be known to God, promising that the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard our hearts and minds. Note that it does not say the situation will instantly become easy, but that in the act of releasing control to God, a supernatural peace will stand sentry over your mind. This peace comes not from the absence of the storm, but from the presence of the captain in the boat. Consider Jesus sleeping in the storm while his disciples panicked. They saw the waves and feared death. He saw the Father and knew safety. And the tragedy is that we often live like the frantic disciples rather than the resting Savior. A mind fortified by faith learns to access this tranquility even when the thunder cracks, training itself to counter every anxious thought with a divine promise. Much like David commanding his own soul to bless the Lord and not forget his benefits. You must speak to your fear, declaring that God is faithful and in control. And as you practice this surrender, anxiety loses its grip, replaced by a serenity that the world cannot comprehend. Moreover, faith grants you the resilience to press on when all seems lost, distinguishing the true believers from the superficial ones. For it is easy to have faith when the road is smooth, but the true test arises when the bottom falls out. Life is undeniably harsh, and you will face trials that challenge the very core of your beliefs. Yet the person of faith persists where others quit. Look at the life of Joseph, a man with a divine dream who was sold into slavery by his brothers, falsely accused, and imprisoned for years. He had every justification to become bitter and give up on God. Yet he held fast, and eventually, He was elevated to a position where he could save nations, proving that the pit was merely a passageway to the palace. You must ask yourself how you react when life derails. If you crumble, your faith needs strengthening. For true faith views trials through the lens of James, counting it all joy when facing various trials, knowing that the testing of faith produces patience. This seems contradictory, to find joy in pain. But the spiritually mature understand that trials are the gymnasium of the soul, the resistance training required to build spiritual muscle. Without the battle, there is no warrior, and without the test, there is no testimony. The fifth key is seeing every obstacle not as a dead end, but as a divine setup for growth. Asking not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is God forging in me?" A shift in perspective that turns stumbling blocks into stepping stones. Furthermore, faith empowers you to make superior decisions by liberating you from the tyranny of emotions. Most people navigate life reactively, making choices based on temporary feelings of fear, anger, or excitement, often leading to deep regret. However, walking by faith and not by sight means decoupling your decisions from your transient emotional state and anchoring them in eternal truth. If Moses had acted on his fear, he would never have confronted Pharaoh. And if David had acted on his insecurity, he would have fled from Goliath. Emotions are given by God, but they are designed to be passengers in the car of your life. Never the driver. They can be present, they can be felt, but they must not touch the steering wheel. When you face a crossroads, you must ask yourself if you are deciding based on panic or on the promises of God. For when you filter your choices through faith, you move with wisdom and purpose rather than impulse, trusting in the Lord with all your heart and leaning not on your own understanding, allowing Him to direct your paths. Additionally, faith cultivates a profound patience, teaching you to trust in God's perfect timing in a culture addicted to instant gratification. We want answers now, healing now, and success now. And when the delay stretches on, we spiral into anxiety. Yet, as Ecclesiastes reminds us, for everything there is a season, implying that God operates on a cosmic timetable that rarely aligns with our frantic urgency. Faith is the capacity to wait without worrying, to trust without seeing, just as Abraham waited 25 years for the son of promise. This waiting room is the ultimate test of trust, and many fail here, taking matters into their own hands like King Saul who, in his impatience, offered the sacrifice unlawfully and lost his kingdom. We must learn that waiting on God is not passive inactivity but active trust, renewing our strength like eagles, knowing that His delays are not denials. Faith also bestows upon you an unshakable identity, freeing you from the exhausting prison of public opinion. So many waste their lives clamoring for validation, terrified of rejection, their self-worth fluctuating with the praise or criticism of others. But when you know who you are in God, the applause of the crowd becomes irrelevant, as Paul wrote to the Galatians. If he were still trying to please men, he would not be a servant of Christ. You cannot serve two masters, and seeking universal approval is a fool's errand because people are fickle. They will cheer you one day and crucify you the next. Jesus moved with absolute authority because he knew he was the Son, independent of the crowd's validation. And you too must ground your worth in what the Creator says about you, that you are chosen, loved, and purposed, finding a freedom where you no longer need to impress anyone because you are already approved by the only one who matters. This spiritual grounding inevitably leads to courage. The ninth key, enabling you to face what you once feared. Courage is not the absence of terror but the decision to move forward despite it. Fueled by the promise given to Joshua to be strong and courageous because the Lord is with him wherever he goes. You stop looking at the size of the giant and start looking at the magnitude of your God. Realizing that bravery comes not from self-reliance but from God-reliance, you confront the fear of failure, rejection, or the unknown, knowing that the Almighty goes before you. As we approach the 10th principle, we find that faith provides peace in the midst of chaos, a peace that Jesus described as unlike anything the world can give. It is a peace that does not depend on the cessation of conflict but exists within it. Like Daniel in the lion's den, who remained calm not because the lions were gone but because his God was present. We often think peace will come when our bank account is full or our problems are solved. But that is a fragile illusion. True peace is the ability to sleep in the storm because you know who holds the waters. Casting your cares upon him and refusing to let the stress of the uncontrollable erode your spirit. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, faith gives you the power to rise after a fall. Many are paralyzed by past mistakes, convinced they are disqualified from their destiny. But Proverbs tells us that a righteous man falls 7 times and rises again. Faith is not just for the perfect, it is for the broken who dare to believe in restoration. Just as Peter was restored after his shameful denial of Christ, proving that your failure is not final unless you refuse to get up. God is in the business of redemption. And if you have fallen, if you have erred, faith is the hand that reaches down to pull you from the ashes, declaring that although you have fallen, you will rise, for your story is not over. And with God, the best chapters are often written after the hardest ones.